points going around, okay? So we have those 4 points. You're plugging each one in for the x and y in your objective function, okay? So every single one of these, so you're going back to this function and you're going to plug in 0, 5. And you're going to see, is that the minimum? Is 0, 3? Is that the minimum? Is 4, 3? Is 4, 0? And you're going to do each of those. When we do our project on Tuesday, tomorrow, you will have a worksheet that looks almost like this, 1 to 3. You'll either be working on it by yourself or with a partner. It's due at the end of the period. You can choose whoever you want to work on with it. It's due at the end of the period, okay? When you come in, you'll have one question that looks kind of like number 1 where you have to graph. All these answers are in the back if you haven't checked them. So when I'm looking at number 2 and I'm looking at that graph, and then when you plug those in, to find the minimum, you need to show me the work for these points as you look at them to get your answer. For what is your minimum point, okay? Do we need help on doing that part? Okay? So in number 3, we got to write our equations. So number 3 is pretty much what all of the questions look like on your worksheet today that you are working on. If you have your device, I want you to open it up and go to Desmos calculator while we look at it. So you don't need to talk, you don't need to make a lot of noise, you just need to keep this page up. Because we're doing number 3 and we're going to use the calculator on there also. In number 3, first statement tells us that we are baking for a bake sale, chocolate chip and raisin cookies, and later in the problem it says X is the chocolate chip and Y is the raisin. So that's key information as I'm looking at question 3. We're still doing number 3. So number 3, when we look at that, X is our chocolate chip, Y is our oatmeal. So on your graph, X and Y, you should have X is your chocolate chip, and this is going to be our oatmeal, raisin, right? Oatmeal. And the first thing it tells us is that he gets 25 cents for each chocolate chip and 30 for each oatmeal cookie. That is actually, if we're trying to find, and in this case, we are trying to maximize, find the most money we can make, that is our equation. That is what's called our objective equation. So using this information right here, that it's 25 cents for chocolate chip and 30 cents for oatmeal raisin. I know there's a few of you that have your objective equation. Someone want to tell me what we're writing? So, check.
P equals 0.25x plus 0.3y.
And you could have 0.30 or 0.31, right? That's our objective. That's what you're plugging all the points into. Now, in this case, we're trying to maximize it, so we should have maybe 3, if not 4 points that you need to check. Sometimes there's 5 points you have to check. Okay? Number 2, next part of it. He cannot make more than 500 cookies of each time. Well, if X is my chocolate chip, how could I write that? X has to be greater or equal to. Is it greater or equal or less than equal? Less or equal to 500. Next thing. Y less or equal to 500. Next statement says he cannot make more than 800 total. Oh. So X and Y together has to be less or equal to 800. And then the next statement says he doesn't want the number of oatmeal cookies to be more than triple the number of chocolate chips. So oatmeal is Y. He does not want it to be triple. Triple would be times 3. So Y, and he says he does not want the cookies to be more than triple, so we're going to go less or equal to 3x. When you set your scale, my guess would be possibly 50. Some of you might have gone by 100. And the reason I would want to do that is that I'm looking at 800 for my y-intercept, and if I was looking at this one, I'm going to have 100. So each one as I go across here, again, and if I'm looking at that, what do I know my x-intercept has to be? So All right, so we're going to have, if we are looking at this one, so we should have going up, and I'm just going to put 800 here, if we're going to go here, right? So that's the first part of my graph, okay? Less or equal. It's less than our x, so if I'm graphing these two, that's telling me that when I get to 500, right? So 300, this would be 400, 500. Going across, it has to be less than that, right? And then over here at 500, it has to be less than that. So right now, I think it's in this region. I need one more equation. I need my y equals 3x, less or equal to 3x. That's the only one I haven't graphed. So if I graph this last one, I'm going to start at 0, 0, and I'm going up 3 and over 1. And I'm going to do that for each one. And I'm going to have this equation, right, where I went up 3 and over 1. Okay? And when I look at that, my shape, then, is this region. It's almost looks like a trapezoid, but it's 5-sided instead of 4. Okay? You have to graph each one individually. Now, when I look at that answer, they did theirs, if you look at their answer in the back. Kind of the same thing. Mine is just maybe a little different in shape, but you have this one going here. And what I want you to do is right now go to your Desmos calculator and let's put in these equations.
Is there a reason that they look
So,
different?
what's that?
Is there a reason that they look different as to the scale?
Probably the scale. So if we are putting it in, the first one, right, was x was less or equal to 500. And again, if I'm looking at this, like to get 500, right, I'm going to make this, I'm going to want to go ways, you know. Okay. Next, I'm going to put that my y was also less or equal, correct, than 500. Okay, so right now it's in this section. I might want to make that just so I'm seeing from 500 to 500, right? I want to look at my next equation. We had x plus y in that next equation. So we had x plus y, if we're writing our equation, plus y was less or equal to 800. Okay? And again, if you want, you can change, like when we look at those, you can change those colors too, looking at it. I don't know that black is the best. Our next equation was y was less or equal, wasn't it, to 3x?
Yeah, probably.
To 3x. So, these got kind of dark. I don't know what colors yours came up with, but you are looking at checking the point 0, 0, at checking this point. Negative 166 and 2/3, 500. This would be our next point that I'm looking at, right here at 300, 500. This point should be at 500, 300, and this last one at 500, 0.
Just stop saying, what did I do wrong?
I'm not sure.
They're all the exact same as what's on the board when that came up.
I'm not sure. Yeah. Number 2, and we're going to read it in parts so we can write our equation as we're doing it. So, if you start, Natalie, would you read those first couple?
A hospital patient is on a special diet that must include at least 140 milligrams of vitamin A and at least 125 milligrams of vitamin B.
Go one more.
These requirements can be obtained from 2 types of protein powder that is added to their food.
So, it says you're going to have powder X, and you're going to have 10 milligrams of that in vitamin A and 20 milligrams in vitamin B per pound. Then it says Y contains 30 milligrams in vitamin A and 15 in B. So, powder X in vitamin A. So you want to think of vitamin A. So this is kind of a weird one to work because you got lots of different variables. So everyone should be on their work, but you can leave your calculator up because we're going to use the calculator. Leave it up. Yep, don't shut it, just leave it up. And you're going to go to vitamin A. And vitamin A is made up of that first X. How much X in vitamin A?
140.
Okay, so it has to be less, greater or equal or less or equal to 140? At least, so greater or equal to 140. How much of X do you have in vitamin A? You have 10. Okay, so how many pounds of powder Y is in vitamin A? You got to go back and read. How much of Y is in A? Read. Try. Don't say it out loud. Write it down in front of the Y. Put the number so I could see. Okay. Don't say it. Write it down. So you're going to read how much of Y is in vitamin A. And then I agree when you go to this next one, it's greater or equal to 145. You are going to have something in front of the X. How many pounds of that? And how many pounds of Y? Okay. I want to look. You have to read in the question. This is a tougher one. So that second part of that first equation, A, had 10 pounds of powder X. Emily, how much of powder Y did it have? Okay, so go to where it says Y and for vitamin A. So when we look at this, so this says 10, X has 10 in vitamin A, and down here it says Y has 30 in vitamin A. This has to be a 30. Does that make sense? That's vitamin A, right? It says it right behind it. It says there's, in powder X, there's 10 milligrams of vitamin A. This next part, right, has 20 milligrams for vitamin B. That's of the X, right? So that means out here in B, vitamin B, it has a 20. This is the toughest one, I think, of all of them to write. That's why I wanted to go through it. Okay? And then the Y is 15.
That makes no sense.
Okay? So this one is unlike many of the other ones. I'd say a lot of the other ones you shouldn't have too much of a problem writing. And the other two constraints that we have is that X has to be greater or equal to 0 and Y must be greater or equal to 0. We now need to have our objective function. So our objective function, what are we trying to do? We're going to minimize, right? We're going to find the lowest cost, right? So when you get your final answer, we're looking for the lowest. So when I look for my objective function, what am I looking for to get my cost? Well, C is going to equal $12 of X, could be P, cost, profit, however you want to use that, plus what? 8Y. This is what I put my points into. Right now, what's nice about this, you cannot use the Desmos calculator on your project. You're going to be using graph paper. I'm going to hand graph paper out. Okay? So, how would we rewrite this equation in slope-intercept form, that first equation? So, if you're going to rewrite this, you should still, as you do this homework, I mean, by all means, use the Desmos calculator, right? But if I'm going to rewrite this equation, I should rewrite this as Y is greater or equal to, we are going to have a negative 1/3 X, right? Do you agree?
Yes.
We're subtracting 10X. This was my Y. And now I'm going to take 140 and divide it by 30.
That is
140 divided by 30 gives us
59. That's like 1. No, it's not 1.
so.
That's
4.6. So if I'm going to go to my calculator, right? I can put in the equation as it was written as 10x plus 30y is greater or equal. But you want to make sure you know how to graph these on your own also. So if we are looking at that, and we are putting those in. So let's just put this in so you can see what your solution and then how you're looking at this. So when I look at the Desmos calculator, my first one that you should have typed in should have been 10x, right? 10x plus 30y and you should have had less or greater or equal to 140. So when I look at that, this scale, I actually want to come make it so that I can see a little better, right? Okay. So make sure that you have your scale. Going to your second equation that we had, our second equation was 20x
Why is mine so weird?
plus, okay, so quiet please, 20x, and then we're going to have our plus, if we are looking at it, and then we are going to have our 15y, and again this one was greater or equal to 145. Okay, so far we are looking at this dark green area, right?
How do you change the color?
And now we want to put in that it has to be x is greater or equal to 0, and we have our y is greater or equal to 0. So I am looking for my points, and these are the points I am looking at. This point at 0, 9.9 2/3, right? I'm going to check 5/3, and I'm going to check my points. I think it's over here. 14, 0. So when I look at that, because I'm trying to find the minimum, not the maximum, these should be my 3 points. Okay?
Okay, so like...
So in your homework tonight, my hint would be I would try and write your constraints first. I would not get too worried about your graphing. I would try and come up with your equations, and if you need to start by looking at this table, you're going to graph each one individually. Okay? You graph each equation individually. Get it in slope-intercept form. You can use the Desmos calculator. If that calculator is not helping you, you should have every one of these written. When you look in the back, please turn into your back answer key of your homework. Every single one, you need to make it smaller, your scale. So when I'm looking at yours, you need to make it going bigger so that you can see these.
Yes, I finally got one.
Okay. Yeah.